name is Catherine Kemmler, and I'm the flute professor here at Louisiana State University. And now I'm going to discuss the second etude that is required for the all-state auditions this year. And there will also be a recording on another track of one of my students, Marley Etter, playing this etude in its entirety. And I urge you to listen to that. This piece is by Johann Sebastian Bach, but I really don't think it's for flute. I'm not sure where it comes from. I've been trying to find it. I couldn't find it. But it is entitled Giga, or in French they say gigue, and in English we say jig. And it's really just a lively dance movement in 6/8. But I really think that the most important thing that people are going to be listening for when they listen to you play this from behind the screen is they're going to be listening for a very crystal clear, well-supported articulation, which is not always easy to do. So one of the things I would suggest that you try before you work on this is that you take some grains of uncooked rice or even some watermelon seeds and put them in your mouth and practice spitting them into a trash can to get the feeling of what it would be like to articulate a little more forward in your mouth. I learned this technique from Jean-Pierre Rampal, who is no longer with us, so maybe that dates me, but it was really great. His favorite piece of music was the Stammets G Major Concerto. And if you play the beginning of that concerto with your tongue behind your teeth, which most people do, but if you play it more forward in your mouth, actually the way the French do, between the lips, it'll sound like this. And hopefully you can hear the difference between those two. It's just a little bit more clear, a little bit more present. So I'm just suggesting you don't have to do this, but it might be a good idea before you play this to experiment with a little bit of forward tonguing. But the most important thing, other than tonguing more forward, would be really making sure that you are supporting your articulations. And so I think the first step of this might be to practice without tonguing at all, just going ha 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 ha, like this. So I wasn't tonguing at all, I was just going ha 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 ha. And I have to admit, when I do this, I feel a little bit like a panting dog. And the faster I go, the smaller the dog gets, so it's almost like a chihuahua when I'm going really fast. If you're trying this and you're not able to go fast, make sure you're not moving your lips too much, because if you're going, you're not going to go fast. It has to be all inside, like that. Okay, so once you can do that, then the next step would be to add your tongue lightly, but still keep pushing as if you weren't tonguing. So you will feel as if you're kind of pulsing on every single note. And that's okay, but this is not what we want for our finished product, because A, it's too slow, and B, it's a little too heavy. So another intermediate step that we might take would be to have you, instead of pulsing on every single 16th, is to maybe pulse on every other one. And so then it'll sound like this. And again, that may be a little better, but it's still a little bit heavy and a little too slow for what we want. So the final step will be to try to just give one big push on every dotted quarter note, and try to keep the tongue very light, but make sure that the push carries all the way through the beat. So I think that's a little better. I want to point out that I think this tempo marking for this 72 to the dotted quarter is way too fast. It really sounds frantic at that speed, so I would recommend slightly slower, maybe 65 or 66. And I like to practice it with subdivisions. So, like that. When you're just beginning your practice, because this is a technical piece, you might want to slow it way down just to start. The slowest that this metronome can go is 30. Dum, dee, dum, bum, da, 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 da. Or even slower if you need to. Just do whatever you have to do to learn the notes. Okay, so at the end of the second line of this, we have a dynamic contrast. And all the notes are marked staccato. But I think a good way to try to help you to get a good dynamic contrast is, first of all, when you're playing forte, which you will be doing in the bar before the piano, because that forte holds over until there, you should aim the air more down into the flute and perhaps even slightly lengthen the notes a little bit. And then when you're soft, lift the air a little bit, maybe push your lips forward, think the air a little higher, and maybe even think the notes a little shorter. And then back down. And that way you'll have a good contrast. So if I play the whole thing. So you see how you can hear, hopefully, hear a dynamic contrast there. Okay, going on from there, we have a sequence. Now, in the sequences in the other etude, we talked about building up. They were all going up and they were getting louder. In this case, our sequence is going down and it's getting softer. So. So when you're doing this, again, you can do the same thing. When it's louder, you can use keep the air down and keep the notes a little longer, and when it's soft, you can keep the air up and be a little shorter. But also, this figure gives us some good breathing places. You can always take a breath before the accented note, but you don't want to be late on that note. So you might want to clip the note before it, even though it's not marked that way. And also, the note with the accent also has a little tenuto over it, which I kind of like to do because it makes it feel like it's leading into the next bar. And so on. So you feel that how you're going to make that, phrase that, and make those notes be longer and lead into the next while making the dynamic change. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, you have another dynamic contrast. And this one's a little bit more difficult because of the range of the notes. The soft bits are at the higher end of the middle register, and the louder notes are in the low register. So again, you can kind of lengthen and aim down for the lower ones. And so on. And with the soft ones, you can't really make them too short except for the last note because they are slurred, but you can clip the last note. And I actually like to practice these separately like this. Rest. And then the other way. 1, 2. And then you put it all together. And here, at the end of this, which is the end of what you have for the district band auditions, there are 4/16 notes that have tenuto lines over them. So that just means you can make them a little bit more stressed, a little longer, a little heavier. And the same thing happens at the end of the etude, but there's actually a retard Here there is no retard. The end.